Hello, everyone. Our panelists are rolling in. Are we all here? All right. So, welcome everyone. My name is Stephanie Watts, and I am an advocate and board member of the HBCU Hub. And we welcome you all to our second annual New York City HBCU Week. This is super exciting that we can still make this happen in a post-COVID, super virtual world. We're so excited to have all of you here with us tonight. Y'all could be anywhere in the world, not really, because it's COVID. Y'all asses need to be home. But we're happy that you joined us tonight. So first, we just want to introduce our panelists. So I'm not like into the really like rigid, 2-paragraph intro. We really want to know who you are. So panelists, in your intro, I would love for you to just give us a little synopsis about where you're from, where you went to school, and where you enter in terms of this conversation. So let's see. Gabby, you want to kick it off?
Sure. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Gabby. I'm from the Bronx, New York. I currently live in Harlem. I went to school for undergrad at Howard University in DC. And then I went to grad school in New York. I came back at NYU for my master's in social work. I am a traveler at heart. My family's from Jamaica, so we've been traveling back and forth since I was born. And I just love seeing new cultures, new experiences. So in undergrad, I went to London as well as Mexico. And then for grad school, I spent a year in China. And then when I was in China, I traveled all of Asia. So I'm super big advocate for study abroad, and I love traveling. That's my thing. And yeah, that's me.
Thank you. Let's take it to Lamar.
What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for joining. My name is Lamar Chambly. I use he, him pronouns. I am from Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn all day, but I grew up down south in the 757. So New York and Virginia are both home for me. I went to undergrad at the College of William and Mary, where I was a Hispanic Studies major in the Modern Languages and Literature department. And then after college, I moved to New York, and so I'm an educator. I'm a high school Spanish teacher. I've been teaching now, this is beginning my 8th year. And for the past 2 years, I started an organization called Teens of Color Abroad. Our focus is to provide high school students of color with access to language immersion study abroad programs. Obviously, during COVID, we're not traveling right now. And so we are organizing virtual language learning and cultural exchange programs. I'm super excited to share more about later. But super excited for the high school students that are tuned in. Shout out to y'all for thinking about your future, even during this time where you're stuck at home. Super excited to list out some resources so we can make sure that you all see the world.
Thanks, Lamar. Let's swab it on to Kiara.
Hi, beautiful people. My name is Kiara Smith. I am here from Harlem, New York, born and raised. Woo woo. I've done my undergrad at Hampton University, and I was in psychology. I'm currently pursuing my master's degree in higher education at SUNY Stony Brook University. And currently I am an admissions assistant at SUNY Old Westbury. A lot of SUNYs for you guys, right? And yeah, I just love, enjoy, and get excited about helping young people. Even I was a college coordinator with Harlem Children's Zone. I worked for them for 7 years. So this is my passion. This is life for me. And yeah, so I'm just here to answer any and all questions for you guys. Some of my background, not only have I worked with students domestically to enroll in college, but I've also worked with international students with getting them enrolled and helping students domestically find study abroad opportunities for them. So I'm excited and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. We're super excited to have you. So many New York natives in the group. I'm really excited to talk to y'all. Next we have Corday.
Yes, hi. My name is Corday. I'm Malay. I am a psychologist for the state of New York. So I attended an HBCU in North Carolina called Livingstone, and then I attended Stony Brook in New York and Island, and John Jay for my master's in forensic psychology. And I was asked to be on the panel in this discussion because I attended both the HBCU and what they term PWI, predominantly white institution. I've also lived state and in state. I have lived on campus. I've lived off campus. I have also attended during grad school. I attended school in the city and lived in the city. I'm a native of Brooklyn, born and raised in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and I feel the psychology, and I absolutely love my field. I had to go through a journey to figure out where in the field I fit in best, and I landed in forensics. I currently work for the state. I'm looking forward to getting back into forensics, but right now I just do mostly evaluations for general populations here in Brooklyn. And I just found undergrad and participating in HBCU advocacy because I think it's just such a needed conversation and one that I was privileged to have when I was in school, in high school. If you told me I wasn't going to a HBCU, those were fighting words for me in high school. And so I just I know a lot of I have mentees and through other organizations where I have young people that I mentor, and I am definitely that older person now that gets super hyped, and my students is like, all right, calm down, Miss Corey, calm down, whatever. But you will still learn that Miss Corey is true. I'm excited to be here and be part of this conversation. And you guys will see me, my face, in about 20 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes. So that's it.
Thank you. And last, but the black man is never the least, David, if you can do your intro. Oh, we can't hear you. You got yourself on mute.
How you doing, everybody? David Mason here from Harlem, New York. I'm actually the little cousin of Kiara Smith there, also from Harlem. What can I say? I grew up in the city. I played high school football. I think I got my big break during New York City Summer Youth Program, where I worked for like a law firm. And then after that program was over, I was offered a part-time position after school. I kind of think that really motivated me to want to be independent and kind of want to just do things on my own. And I think it greatly influenced my my decision in going away for college, where I went to Morrisville State College. I studied criminal justice, where I graduated with my bachelor's. My senior year was very hectic. I was doing a full-time internship at Onondaga Correctional Facility, as well as working as a loss prevention officer. And I literally had 0 days off for 4 or 5 month semester, no days off. But I got to where I wanted to get to. And for the past 5 years, I've been working as a private investigator. And best decision I ever did was to go away for college.
Nice. Thank you all. I'm super excited to have a jam-packed panel. So since you are all native New Yorkers, I'm not. I'm from Philly, so I'm really deferring to you all for a lot of this conversation because we are speaking to the younger generation of people who are young people who are from New York City. So what were the resources afforded to you all in terms of your middle school, high school counselors, and outside organizations that can kind of assist you through this matriculation process, if there was one at all? Y'all can just jump in.
Okay,
Oh,
so
okay.
I'll jump in. So really quick, I would say fraternities and sororities and church. And various nonprofit organizations, I would give the advice to young people to just go out and reach out to any networks that you possibly can, right? My mother, and now I am a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. So at the time, I had a lot of friends. Ooh. So I had a lot of friends and family members, well, you know, my aunts and uncles that were like, okay, what do you need? And actually being honest and saying what you need, right? So I need help with books. I need help with stamps to apply to college. I need different things. So they were very helpful. So when scholarships came across people's laps because I was asking for these things, or because I, you know, was actively talking to my various networks, it helped, right? So they were like, oh, you know what? Kiara needs to apply for this. Or they would reach out to me. They would email me. So I would say just, you know, you can start small. You know, you could start within your community. You could start with your next door neighbor, but get out there and actually talk to people, you know.
Corday, do you want to jump in?
Yes. So to piggyback on my soror, hey soror, a large part of just my understanding or my exposure was also grassroots organizations. So one that I was active with since very young. I went to junior high school. I was exposed to grassroots organizations where we went on college tours, and my older brother, he went away to HBCU, to university. And so, you know, being born and raised in Brooklyn, my family says I'm the most Brooklyn one of them all, because I went to elementary school here, preschool, junior high school. And so when I saw my brother leave to go to Alabama, I was like, oh, we can leave? Okay, where did he go? And so I went on these tours, and just the exposure of something different and seeing a diverse view of myself and on these campuses, like you don't even understand how diverse HBCU is until you visit it and you see it firsthand and just have that energy and having that exposure so early. That's why I said earlier in my intro that if you told me I wasn't going to HBCU in high school, oh, you was insulting me. But one thing that I did find that was a hindrance was that my college advisor was really pushing me away from that idea. And because I had this already kind of exposure to it, I knew better. And I was like pulling at some of my friends to know better too, but I also very much aware that that was a privilege I had that everyone didn't have. So just as my source said, participating in things outside of school to broaden your horizon, I think definitely was a large factor in me moving the way that I did as a young person. And I was a very much jump out the window kind of person. So you said I could jump out this window and leave New York, I was gone. So I think that was a big part of just my footsteps to going the direction that I went.
Well, it's funny you say that, because like so many New Yorkers, you cannot tell them that New York is the world. Like New York is the world, that's it, nothing else exists, period. So it's really interesting that you were saying that, you know, once you knew that you could leave, that felt like an option. So like for Corday, the impetus for going away to school was an older brother. For some other people on the panel, what else like influenced your collegiate search in terms of location?
I'll jump in. So for me, I wanted not particularly to get away from New York. I love New York. I've been many places. This is still my favorite place. I can't, you know, there's nothing like it. But I wanted it, to be honest, get away from my parents. You know, I love them to death, but
Yes.
you need a break. And you really grow without them. They do everything for you. You know, if you're blessed to have that, they do a lot for you, and that's cool. But you have to become independent. And I knew I wanted to go somewhere where if I needed to come back home, I could. But nowhere that would, like, they couldn't show up every weekend. I didn't need that. So I chose DC because I was like, this is just perfect. It's 4 hours. It's a cheap bus ticket away. Perfect. That was like the best place I could have went.
Anyone else want to share what influenced their location decision? Is David, you forever talking on mute. One thing about David tonight, he gonna talk on mute.
I'm sorry. I'm at work, so I'm really multitasking here. But yeah, to piggyback off what Gabrielle was saying there, one of my decisions was being the distance. You know, just being about 4.5 hours for me. Being in Syracuse area, it was a quick, drive home if I needed to get back to my family, but it was still far enough that nobody would come visit me. Um, but I would say, like, for me personally, some resources that really influenced my academics decisions was surprisingly while I was playing football in high school. My coaches were really strong on academics. We would take road trips to different colleges, but not just for the football aspect, also for the academic aspect, meeting with professors, seeing the college campuses. So just being strongly influenced in the outside recreational sport actually helped influence my academic choices. And I definitely wouldn't have made any decisions that I have made if it wasn't for my coaches, my teammates, just having that brotherhood, having them pushing me, pushing each other, motivating each other. It's definitely very inspirational. Just whatever group, whatever it be, churches, little networks, even your friends, your family. I feel like just having those close net of inspirational people just pushing you, motivating you on and off the field, as coaches would say, on and off the field, get it done.
Yeah, and I love that you went to school that was 4 hours away. So you're still in the state of New York, but 4 hours away is the same thing as going to a HBCU somewhere far. And I think a lot of people, when they think about going away for school, that means you got to leave the state. But New York is huge. Like, I had no idea how big New York was until I moved here. And I'm like, I want to go upstate. And my idea upstate was like Yonkers. You know what I mean? Like, people say upstate, and that's what my friends would say when they meant upstate. But then I was like, oh, wait a minute. There's like a Syracuse and then always to Niagara Falls. And so the whole SUNY system can also allow someone the opportunity to go very far away from school, like almost the distance of going to like maybe like an hour drive in the time of driving, like Virginia, North Carolina, and you can still be in the state of New York. So Kiara, I know you work within the SUNY system, so could you talk a little bit about the benefits financially of the going away / staying home aspect of going to a SUNY?
Yes. So for New York residents, it is significantly cheaper and more affordable, I should say, to go. And honestly, if we're talking about comparisons to HBCUs, to SUNY, or even just any other public and private institutions, it's really what's best for the student. But financially, it's more affordable. You have different programs like TAP and the Excelsior Scholarship that is available for New York State residents. So when we talk about going to a private institution where you're paying like $30,000 a year, you pay probably less than that for the 4 years or 6 years plus at a SUNY institution, SUNY or CUNY. I'll even put it there, like SUNY or CUNY. So there are many benefits, especially if these institutions are providing what you would like, right? The on-campus experience, the affordability, and the distance away from home, because as you stated, Stephanie, and David stated, New York City is vast in itself, right? So when you think about the state as a whole, it's plenty of opportunity for students. So it's just about really doing the research, and I particularly would say visiting the campuses if you can. So now the great thing with COVID, because COVID isn't great, but the great thing about COVID is it has put fire under colleges and institutions that don't have virtual tours available for students. Now they're virtual tours, right? Because we have to get the demand going for students to see these campuses. So Now you don't have to necessarily worry about actually physically going to the campuses, but there's an opportunity to do virtual tours. So those are just some of the highlights of going to a SUNY or CUNY college. But again, it's upon the students, right? Do your research and get out there so you can figure out what the match is for you.
And quite a few people. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna have my little input. So when you finish, I'll say what I'm my.
No, go ahead, jump in.
Okay, so one thing I always kind of going back and forth about is in-state, out-of-state, and money thing. And one thing that I really, really stress is that there is money out there and there's money in HBCUs for scholarships
Yes.
and other opportunities. And one of my, and even for me, people say, oh, there's no HBCUs in New York. No, but you know, you just have to jump to get to Lincoln University, which is actually closer than a lot of upstate schools, but far enough away that, you know, I can't be like, I'm coming and you know she's coming, you know. And I stress because I know so many people who follow the money and not their heart. And I stress constantly to go where your energy takes you. You will find the money. You will make it work. I say even look at the past 2 years where you had millionaires say, oh, you know what? This graduating class paying all your debts, you know? And so often, that's why grass organizations, churches, always talking about come get this money. And people don't come and get this money. Write that essay, you know, come to that interview. There is money sitting on the table waiting for you that you can follow your heart. So follow your heart, not the money. And I stress because, you know, I'm from New York. I love New York, you know, old New York, but that's a different story. But New York always here.
Don't trigger the pain.
You can go. You can go to nothing like an undergrad experience when you're 17, 18, 19, and 20. You can go get your master's anywhere. New York isn't going anywhere. You know, so go. You're not missing anything. 4 years, it seems like forever, but when you look back, it's a blink of an eye. But the experience, and when you follow your heart, it's everything. Remember, Miss Corey is always right.
No, thank you for saying that because, you know, a lot of people do feel like, because I know, and this is kind of later in the conversation, but I know I didn't do study abroad because I was like, oh, I'm going to miss XYZ in Atlanta because I went to Clark. And I'm like, and on looking back, I was like, I ain't missed nothing. I could have went for that year and came back. You know what I mean? So I definitely appreciate you saying that New York will always be here. But quite a few of you on the panel went away for undergrad and then came back to get your grad degree here in New York. So, like, can you kind of talk about the pros and cons of that experience in terms of being away for undergrad and then coming back as an adult and going to school as an adult and relearning your hometown as an adult?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. And just to be clear about my experience, I sort of grew up in Virginia, right? And so going to William and Mary in state was just logical because it was an incredibly academically competent college at a fairly reasonable price. But New York has always felt like home for me. When I grew up in Virginia, every summer break, every spring break, every winter break, I was back in New York because my dad lives in Staten Island. So again, New York always felt like home. And so after college, when I graduated and came back to New York, it felt like this wild homecoming, right? Where I got to get to know New York City, but as an adult, no longer as a 9-year-old kid who had these, you know, doe-eyed big ideas about the big city, but like, wow, I'm actually here now. So what do I do now that I'm in this incredible city and I'm over 21 and I have these resources at my fingertips? And that made me have I guess, a greater appreciation of my New Yorkness, but also excited to give back to students. It made me want to come back to this city and get into teaching, where I got to, work with incredible high school students for now 8 years. And so I think having that experience where you go away and come back, you also get to really give back to your community and give back to home. I grew up down the street from here, and it's wild to come back and work with students who are from the same projects where I'm from. But I can talk about my experience going to college and studying abroad, and to give them an idea of what is possible beyond Brooklyn, beyond New York City, even beyond the US. And so I think, we just really want to continue thinking about how we can uplift our communities. And so, leaving home and then coming back and then continuing to give back here is just one of those examples.
Thank you for that. Because, I think, for a lot of people, we don't want to lean into respectability politics, so we don't say Du Bois's name in mixed company. But I'm still a huge proponent of the talented 10th in terms of the giving back, right? So it's like when you go away, it's like required that you pay it forward. So I really appreciate you kind of bringing that to the conversation, Lamar. But let's talk a little bit about the culture shock, because Bed-Stuy to coastal Virginia, I think, Kiara, you say you're from the Bronx, so the Bronx to DC, Brooklyn to coastal Virginia, and Houston. What was that like when y'all New York selves got to these cities?
Well, no, I love Uptown, but I'm from Harlem.
It's Bronx.
I'm from the Bronx, yeah.
No, it's Harlem,
Don't kill me, y'all.
So no, I'm not gonna kill you, but no. Well, coming back for me, I wanted to touch on what Lamar was saying. Like, it was different. Now I'm over 21, right? But coming to Harlem, the gentrification, I didn't know what was going on. I was just like, oh wait, hold on, And actually, my David, he's my cousin. I actually was just like, well, I asked him questions. I actually ended up getting I forget what type of book it was, but it told me of all the different restaurants that were in Manhattan. And I started using that to just like rediscover Harlem, rediscover Manhattan, rediscover New York City as a whole, because I didn't know where I was for a moment, right? Coming back home. It was different. What I enjoyed, and I'm pretty sure that Lamar can attest to, I missed being able to hop on the bus and the train, give my $2.50, $2.75, whatever it was at the time, because it significantly increased. But just being able to be on the go and be in the fast-paced environment again. In Virginia, it was pretty slow. It's good. It was definitely good for me for school. I needed something slow because I was always in the mix. So being able to come back home and then not have that academic responsibility and be in the mix again, I truly enjoyed it. And rediscovering Harlem and all that it had to offer, I enjoyed it. But that's just my little perspective. But yeah, it wasn't hard. It was more so exciting. It was like, oh, okay, this is what's going on. All right, and going with the flow.
Yeah, if I could just jump in and share a few things. I think a lot about my experience moving from New York to Virginia as a younger student. And it was a huge culture shock because Virginia is the capital of the Confederacy. So even some things I didn't understand at that younger age, January, we had Lee Jackson King Day, which in Virginia, they celebrated Martin Luther King Jr. Day the same time that they celebrated Stonewall Jackson and Robert E. Lee. They would not give Martin Luther King Jr. his own, national holiday. And that sounds so far-fetched to probably many of you high school students, like, dang, how old is Lamar? Like, this is through the year 2000, y'all. So this is not a long time ago. This was very recent. And I just remember as a young kid feeling weird about that. And then I had also switched schools where most of my teachers were from the Old South. So a lot of like thinly veiled, and I mean really thinly veiled racist comments. So that was my experience. But then when I went to college at William and Mary, we had students from all over the world. So even though the college was in the South, I was in Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. I was in the Muslim Student Association. I was in the South Asian Student Association. I was in all these different affinity groups in college that it didn't feel like the South like it did, before I got to college. So one of the amazing things about college, again, tying this back into the college experience, is that you'll get to meet people from all over the world. And I think that's one of the like parts about college that is the most inspiring, even in going to an HBCU with Black folks. Well, Black folks are not a monolith, right? You got Black folks from the South, from the West, who have very different cultural experiences. So you will get to learn more about different elements of Blackness by going to an HBCU or going to a PWI and meeting people from all over the world. So no matter where you go to school, like definitely look for these different cultural groups so you can continue to expand as a person.
Yeah, and I think with the onset of the internet, right, we're no longer like just American. We're global citizens now. Whether you like it or not, we're all global citizens. But for all of us that didn't necessarily have nothing but AOL chat A/S/L back in the good days, we had to physically go to these places, right, to kind of get some of this cultural exchange that Lamar is talking about outside of our institution. So for the folks that did study abroad, like, can you share a little bit about like the countries you chose? Why? What was your connection to those cities? And what's something that you walked away from your favorite city with?
Can I just comment on the last question, just because
Sure.
I really just that culture shock of going from New York to Virginia. It was not Virginia, let me say Virginia, North Carolina. It was interesting to learn that I had an accent, and people were like, "Oh, where you're from? Say walk, say talk," nonsense that you like, wait, what? And learning the slang. I ended up being friends with a lot of people from DC. So when someone said, "I'm not going to carry you," I kind of chuckled, because I remember thinking like, I'm not taking you anywhere. So like just the small nuances of just learning about people who look like you but aren't anything like you. And then one thing I loved about HBCU is that and I would hang out with you because of your personality and who you were and your uniqueness, where when I was at my PWI, it was more like, oh, there go Black person, let me thank you for the solace for the moment, and I don't have to be the token for the second. And just, that experience of being in the South, like someone said, with not being able to get up and go. Even though I lived and went to school in Brooklyn, I was in Manhattan, I was in every borough, I was in Queens, I was in, not the Bronx too much. I'm not gonna go visit y'all too much, but I could get up there to go to a game, and you had so much more freedom. And as a freshman, I couldn't have a car, even though I'd had a car. And so you really it was that learn the campus and that kind of unity you kind of feel as a freshman in your class, and just having that camaraderie that I didn't really expect, because high school was cool. I liked high school, it was fun. I was like, yeah, college, it's something I'm gonna do. But it was definitely surprising on how much I connected to people that I hadn't known for very long, and how they were so different from me, but yet so much the same. So that in itself of leaving Brooklyn and finding myself down there was, a surprise for me, even though I had planned to leave. But I really appreciated that kind of switch, and to learn that I had an accent, which blew me away for many years.
No, same. Like, this is not my natural birth accent, and I had to adopt this one because ain't nobody know what I was saying when I got to Clark. That Philly accent was disgusting. But actually, Corday, what you just said actually made me want to shift my study abroad question a little bit, because I love when you said you were able to find yourself in North Carolina. So instead of me saying like, what did you leave with? I want to ask the folks that studied abroad, where did you find pockets of yourself in the cities that you studied in? Or where did you discover self, like, or did you reinvent self while you were in places?
Yeah, so I studied abroad 3 times, twice in undergrad in Mexico and London, and then I did a year in China for grad school. And I started out in London because school stuff, like, you have to have a certain class, it has to match up, blah, blah, blah. And London was the most compatible with my courses. But I'd also say, if I'm being honest, it was the safest option for me, right? So like I went from New York to DC because it's a city, it's similar. It wasn't good. I didn't have to have the huge culture shock of going to the South. So I was like, DC feels safe. I did the same thing with London. I was like, it's kind of like New York. It really is a lot like New York. And I love that about it, right? But I felt after I left London, I was like, I didn't learn enough. I just don't feel like I shook it up enough. I didn't push myself enough. I went to Mexico because Spanish was my minor, and I got extra credits doing that. But it was a lot different. I couldn't speak English like at all. I went to Oaxaca. Nobody spoke English. They hadn't seen Black people. It was a real shifter. And I went with, I think everyone was from Howard. So it was great. It was incredible. The food was great. I loved the culture, the language, etc. But I would say I really started to learn a lot more about myself when I went to China. Number one, it was the longest I've ever been in another country. So a whole year is different than 4 months, or I did a month and a half in Mexico. Very different. Again, nobody's really speaking English, and Chinese is something I had no experience in. So I was really, really pushing myself. And I said it earlier, I traveled other places in Asia while I was there. And just, I think growing up in America, like at home, my family's Jamaican, so they're different, but still, I'm still American. I grew up here. This country teaches you that the way of the Western way is the way. And really going to the East, I really saw there are a lot of things that are different, that even maybe I would still say I disagree with, but I left not thinking of it as wrong. And I felt like I didn't have that strong of a perspective before. So one thing is so when I did my program in China, it was half American students, half Chinese students. And after we worked, maybe like after the first semester, they started to really ask us questions, the Chinese students did, and they started asking us about like what God is. They had never really discussed God ever. They don't have religion. That's not a concept to them. And they were kind of like, why do you need spirituality? What are these books for? What are you looking for in this? And I'm not a religious person, but I am spiritual. And so that really made me think deeper about why I am spiritual and what I am looking for when I'm talking to God, when I'm doing that work. And also made me understand that this is not for everybody. Not everybody grows up this way. And I'm not looking at them as, oh, poor them, they don't have God, but just this is different. And also awesome that they asked me questions, because it helped me think more about my spirituality and my connection with God.
Yeah, that's really dope. To be honest with you, I hadn't really thought of that religious experience for when you travel, right? I've done a lot of traveling, and I always think about race, and I think about gender, how me as a man is a very different experience traveling than women who travel. I hadn't really thought about religion though. But Steph, to your question, yeah, I had 2 really transformational travel experiences in college that really shaped what I do today. The first was my very first trip out of the country to the Dominican Republic, which I was 19 years old. I was part of a medical mission group where we would travel to the Dominican Republic and translate for doctors. So we would open up a free clinic. I got to do ethnographic research in the community and use my Spanish instead of sitting behind a desk conjugating verbs over and over and over again, like many high school students do, and not actually use this language. I got to actually like talk to people and make mistakes and say the wrong words. And I think for me, even though I had seen it before, what really blew my mind in that experience was just like Blackness at a global level. I'm talking to folks who look like me, like, bro, you look like my cousin. But you know, we're speaking entirely in Spanish. And that just sort of blew my mind at 19 and like, whoa, Blackness is global. This isn't something that's just stuck in the States. Like even people down here in the DR celebrate elements of American Blackness. So I remember being so like, thrilled by that. But then also my biggest travel experiences, I studied abroad for 6 months in Sevilla, Spain. And like Gabrielle said, we could not speak any English. All of my classes were entirely in Spanish. I lived with a homestay family, and my homestay family did not speak any English at all. But it was really dope to be in southern Spain, and this was in 2009. So this was right after Obama was inaugurated. So folks were just like super interested in American Blackness. What's it like being a Black male in America right now with a Black president? It was also a chance for me to see how Blackness is celebrated in other white cultures. Like my homestay mom, she insisted on telling me how beautiful she thought Black people were. She just like had to tell me and let me know. And so that was kind of weird, but I thought the dopest part about it was I got to really leverage language and connecting with other young 20-somethings who come from very different backgrounds than my own. And so that just caused me to come back to the States wanting to continue to teach Spanish so that other Black and brown students can have those same opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Could you actually kind of transition into the, so you kind of told us how you got to TOCA, but talk a little bit more about what TOCA does and the way TOCA has transitioned in a post-COVID world.
Wow, I thought you'd never ask, Steph. Yeah, so as I said, I had this incredible experience in college where I was one of the few Black students to study abroad. And so I was able to, you know, of course, become a high school Spanish teacher. And I love teaching high school Spanish here in Brooklyn. But my students felt like 1 hour of Spanish class wasn't enough, and they wanted more opportunities to practice the language. And so they were like, you know, Mr. Chambly, how did you learn Spanish? If no one in your family speaks the language, what did you do? And I told them that I studied abroad and that when they go to college, they absolutely must study abroad. And so they wanted to know about high school study abroad programs. And so I started doing research on high school study abroad programs. And as you could imagine, none of the kids in the photos looked anything like the kids that I was working with. And none of the leadership looked anything like me and the people that are in my community, especially in the nonprofit sector. For Black-led or POC-led nonprofits, they're rare. And so that's when I decided to leave teaching and to start this organization so that we could provide a study abroad resource for high school students of color. Obviously, that cannot happen during this COVID world. And so what we did this summer was we created a month-long virtual language learning and cultural exchange program where we recruited 50 high school students of color from across the country to learn Arabic for 2 weeks. And so they took an hour of Arabic a day, Monday through Friday, and then Friday participated in cultural exchange workshops where they got to talk to other people to hear about their lived experiences. And all of their classes were taught and led by Syrian refugees because we wanted the students to start to undo any harmful stereotypes that they have internalized about what it means to be a refugee, and also to undo harmful stereotypes that we as millennials, you know, and Gen Z growing up in America, things that we have learned about Middle Eastern communities that are just straight up harmful. And so how do we connect students during this extreme time of isolation? How do we connect students to each other, but then how do we connect them to the world at large? And so, yeah, we have this summer program. And I think more importantly, the important part of all of this and why I think it's important to talk about this to high school students is I want you all to think about what you can do now from the safety and comfort of your home to prepare for college, right? And so even during this downtime, there are still so many opportunities that are available to you. And I know for a fact that these colleges and universities, like one of their big questions for admissions is going to be, so tell us, you know, what did you do during this time of COVID blah, 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 blah. And so I would just strongly encourage all of the high school students that are listening to find these resources, right? Because one of the silver linings of COVID is, like I think Kiara said earlier, now organizations are looking to make their programming more accessible to students from all over the country. And so whether that be a program through TOCA or another program where you're like, yo, this seems cool, I want to get involved. Don't be afraid to talk about that when you apply to college, to talk about, you know, how you kept yourself engaged during this time of nothing. And so, yeah, we've been doing these virtual language learning programs. And so we're currently doing Arabic and then expanding into Spanish, where their classes will be taught and led by refugees from Venezuela.
Oh, nice. Cool. Thank you, Lamar. Does anybody else want to share some abroad stories? We're starting to wind down, but I want to get these young people excited about saving their pennies for passports and we can go outside again.
I actually didn't study abroad, but when you said the passport, oh, please get your passport. Always be able to make your exit. And then if you have the opportunity, you can take it without being like scrambling for it. So just get your passport like you get your driver's license. You know, that's on your list.
Yeah, and to add to that, I'll find the resource, but I believe that if you live in New York City Housing Authority, that there is a way to get a passport at an even significantly discounted price. So I'll do my research on that if that's something I'll share with HBCU Hub.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I would say it's just much easier to have your passport, because when it comes time to when you want to study abroad, like there's so many other things that you need to be focusing on as far as paperwork wise. So the passport isn't something that you would want to have hold you back. So if you think in your mind at any point in time, like I might want to study abroad, just have your passport. Like that's because that's just one item on your list that you don't have to worry about paying for because it's already done. You know, you don't have to worry about that processing time and everything else, because I haven't studied abroad. It was something that I regretted not doing when I was in college, but everybody has their own journey, and I probably needed to stay put in the US. But yeah, like when I help students now, you know, I'm helping them with getting their paperwork with their visa and stuff, so depending on how long they're going away. So again, it's just something, having a passport is just a check off the list that you do not have to worry about.
Before I pivot and we ask some more questions of each other, just wanted to check in with any questions we have in the chat. It looks like we have the question, how much does it cost to study abroad?
What a great question. And that's a pretty loaded question because it absolutely depends on where you travel and where you decide to study. Obviously, right now, just thinking about what we're going through, and there may be, you know, COVID fees involved with studying abroad. I do want to drop this resource. They are not paying me, but I drop this resource whenever I talk to people about studying abroad because it really, it made the experience affordable for me. I applied for a scholarship called the Benjamin A. Gilman International Scholarship, and that is through the U.S. State Department. The Benjamin Gilman International Scholarship, they are looking specifically for students who qualify for Pell Grants, and so specifically for students from low-income backgrounds. And so I went to college as a student from, you know, low-income background, and I applied for a Gilman and got it. And so I was awarded about $2,000 to study abroad. And I, you know, very simple application. I wouldn't say simple application, but at my college, I went to the writing center and just like had them look over my application. And since studying abroad, Gilman has been a huge help in me spreading the word about TOCA. And so if you were worried about funds, look at the Benjamin A. Gilman International Scholarship. That is a great, excellent place to start. And if I go ahead and plug TOCA right now, what we're doing is we're continuing to build this library of resources. And so if you join our mailing list and are interested in studying abroad, then we will continue to advertise what organizations are funding study abroad programs for the financially worried.
And thank you for that, Lamar. And Kiara, I have a question because you're at SUNY. So just to get real granular with it, what are the extra fees on top of the tuition? Because I think some people think that like they're paying their tuition and then there's a whole nother tuition to the school that they're going to abroad. So can you kind of break down that like super granular cost?
Yeah, so I'll be inclusive of everything. So one of the great things about being a part of the SUNY system, if you are attending any SUNY college, so that's SUNY Stony Brook, SUNY Old Westbury, that's SUNY Morrisville, right? If you can actually, if there's a program at SUNY Morrisville that you would like to attend, but you're attending SUNY Old Westbury, because you're a part of a system that's of 64 different campuses, you can study with that college, right? So I don't know if I said that clearly, but basically across the SUNY system as a whole, you can study with different schools. So when you talk about on top of like tuition on top, there's like travel costs and travel fees and like what the class would cost, right? So there's no like additional tuition on top of tuition, right? It's you would be paying for the class or that semester. And what SUNY does is once you have your paperwork all together and collected, so that international office of enrollment, because all students that were seeking to go to study abroad will be working with that particular office. They help you with, like, let's say you usually were paying fees, on campus fees, right? They make sure that that's blotted out for that semester or that year, right? So there's different, it's a different procedures. It just depends on where the student is going and for how long, because certain study abroads, they can go from, a week, right? So then you're literally just paying for the trip, or it can go from a whole semester. So you are paying for the semester being abroad, or a whole year, right? It depends, right? It depends on what the student is comfortable with, where the student is going. But there are so many different opportunities and choices. And one of the things that I feel students think are that every choice is expensive, and it actually isn't. And just like Lamar stated, there are scholarships for every single one. If you want to go away for a year, if you want to go away for a week or two, they're scholarships. So I hope I answered your question. Did I answer it to the?
Yep, okay. Definitely did. Thank you. Because I know some people are like, I don't want to pay twice for school. So thank you for like breaking that down.
Yeah, that's like if I can be a myth buster with that, let me be a myth buster. And on top of the SUNY opportunities, again, they're private institutions that have study abroad opportunities like KEI. Like there's different things that you'll be able to just really look for. But you can start with your home campuses and what they offer and go from there.
Thank you. So the Gilman Scholarship, the link for that is in the comments. So anybody that is super interested, make sure y'all bookmark gilmanscholarship.org. Lamar, thank you for sharing that resource. And Kiara, thank you for breaking down the actual fees. Because I think a big thing that keeps people from going abroad is the cost, because we barely paying for school, right? We fighting down to the financial aid just to go to our regular school, so let alone thinking about being abroad. We got another viewer question asking Lamar where he studied. They're going to Madrid next summer. So Lamar was in Seville, which is a few hours south of Madrid. And I wanted to talk to you and Gabby, or just so y'all can share with the young people about how cheap it is to travel within Asia and within Europe. Because when you study abroad in Asia and Europe, you ain't got to stay where you at. Because them tickets is what, $20, $10?
Listen, I was, yeah, the semester that I studied abroad, I went to Milan, I went to Rome, I went to Morocco, I went to 4 different cities in Morocco. And this was just on the weekend, right? Because we only had classes Monday through Thursday when I studied abroad. They gave us Fridays off. So we had a long weekend every weekend, which meant throw down $20 and we can hop on, Ryanair slinging us across the sea, like in some problematic airplane where I could very well have gone down. But yeah, it's when you study abroad, it's just an incredible opportunity to then see other places in the world. So again, I could ramble and I won't, but study abroad.
Gabrielle.
Yes. In Asia, it's not as cheap. It's not $20. But I found maybe like $150 ticket to go to, I went to South Korea for a weekend. I went to the Philippines. I went to Thailand for a week, and I went to Bali. And I never paid more than $200 round trip. And then the stays are so cheap. The food, you're eating well, drinking well for $5. I mean, that was what was incredible. The taxis are 50 cents. I mean, that was incredible. I missed that so much.
All right, just see if we have any more questions.
And I'll add, and oftentimes, right, when students are thinking about the money to go away and study abroad, like, there's refund checks that students get. Save some of that money and put it aside, for book and any other, activities that you may want to do in school. Like, don't spend all of that money. It can really help and benefit you when you're working a part-time job, because some students do, right? Put some of that money aside because I want to go away, right? Like I want to do so. When an opportunity comes along and say you don't get all the necessary scholarships, you have some money saved up so that you can put towards your academic adventure, right? Because I also want to make it a point, your academics do come first, right? So this isn't just a trip that we're going on to, celebrate life and culture, right? We're actually, it's a course you're taking that you have to pass, and that you have the beautiful opportunity to be in another country while doing so. So, yeah, that's just the college coordinator in me.
Because you have people, we ain't hanging out. This is school.
Yeah.
This is still school.
Yeah, and to even get there, you have to have a GPA, right? So I need you guys to 2.5 and better, 2.75 and better, right? To make sure that you have the GPA to even be eligible to go. There are opportunities where there's the GPA, there is none, but those opportunities that most students really want to go on, I'm sorry, like you have to have a 2.7, 3.0 to go. So make sure you don't fool around necessarily. Like, I'll be honest, I did in school. So that was one of the reasons why I didn't get the opportunity to go right away. But don't make the same mistakes, right? That's why I'm here teaching you guys. Do better than us, right? Do better.
Facts. So I typed in that Lamar is studying abroad in Seville. So I put the spelling. So you can search it. And how far is Seville from Madrid, Lamar? About?
It's not too far. It's like an easy train ride down south. But the really dope thing that I appreciated about Seville was, so Spain was ruled by the Muslims in Northern Africa from 711 to 1492. So in Seville, there's beautiful architecture that was influenced by Muslims in North Africa. So I thought it was really dope to see this like really cool cultural clash of like Catholic Spain with Muslim Morocco. So they're like elements of Blackness, at least that I celebrate, that I see. And Seville is just it's what you think of typical Spain. So flamenco, beautiful streets. During the springtime when I studied abroad, there were orange trees everywhere throughout the city. So what that means is every afternoon into the evening, the sun is setting and the entire city smells like oranges. So it is one of the most beautiful experiences that you could have. Again, I think that there is such a beauty in traveling, in being young and Black, because you get to be an ambassador for Black Americans. When I was in Spain, I can't tell you the number of young Spaniards that were just so interested in Black culture, because let's face it, and let's be honest, Black everything, Black culture and our impact is global. Like everyone is looking at us and all that we've contributed to the entire world, like in America and beyond. And so it was kind of mind blowing to me. I was like, you know what? Yeah, no, we do. You're right. Like Black Americans influence everything across the world. And so it was almost like an incredibly like confident moment. And the dope thing about studying abroad then was I studied abroad with a lot of folks from the AUC. So there were a lot of students from Spelman, some guys from Morehouse. And so I got to find other Black American college students who were studying abroad at the same time. So just an incredible all-around experience. Yeah. And the URL for Teens of Color Abroad is teensofcolorabroad.org. I would strongly encourage you to sign up for our email listserv. Students, if you're interested in language learning, we're going to have an Arabic program this fall, but then we'll also do it in the spring. So again, more resources for you to continue to pump up your college resume.
And you know what's so funny? I'm glad that you brought up the AUC, because that was the study abroad trip. Like that's the only one I knew about. And my homegirl, who's from the Bronx, shout out to Sade, she was in Seville for a year and she loved it. She was like, come visit me. And I was like, I'm gonna miss everything at school and miss nothing.
Listen, I did not want to study abroad. I was going to miss my brothers. I was like, yo, we're going to have another line. Like, this is my chance to be dean. And what I'm going to study abroad? Like, what? I had to. And I didn't miss a thing. I checked in during those 2 weekends on Skype. And so I was very much involved in the experience, though I was far away from home. And then I came back to campus and everything was the same. So you won't miss a thing.
Yeah, and I think because we have all these things like FaceTime and WhatsApp and all that, there's less of a gap between you and home. You know, because for us, when we went away, I don't even think Skype was out when I was in college. So when Sade was in Seville, she was in Seville, okay? It wasn't we had Facebook. That's the only way I could like keep in touch with her was Facebook, because she went, I think, 05-06. That school year, she was in Seville.
Yeah, I was telling my students, we didn't have smartphones. So in order for me to get to my homestay, I had to print it out on MapQuest and then get in the cab and be like, okay, here are the directions. I don't know where these streets are. And like, I couldn't imagine doing that now in 2020. Like, what? But
slumming it, okay?
Yeah.
On MapQuest with the wrong directions. Well, we're getting to the end of this conversation. It's been amazing. I could literally like ask y'all more questions, but I think everyone has contributed so much to this conversation tonight. I hope all of the teens and parents that are watching took something away, took some notes, and got excited about like what it means to leave home, whether you're in state or you're going to the other side of the world. Like the one thing I can say about college when you go away is that you have to rely on yourself so much that you learn yourself in a way you've never learned yourself before. And when you come back, your parents and your family see the difference. You know, like there's nothing like being on your own and having to figure it out. it's hard and it's stressful, but you're so appreciative of not having the crutch of being able to just like open the door and your parents in the next room, you know, able to kind of guide you and give you the answers that you need. So we encourage all the parents to let your kids fly the coop, because also a lot of kids don't go away because the parents are like, So all the parents that are on tonight, please encourage your young people to consider going away. You know, they'll be fine. Y'all did a good job. No, y'all did a good job. So that means that your young people can go away and do well and harness all the teachings that you instilled in them. Does anybody want to give any like closing comments, resources before we get out of here?
It's Corday. One thing I just wanted to say about, you know, parents allowing their kids to go off, I think it's important to know yourself, know your child, and go to a school that works for you. You know, one thing I appreciate about a lot of HBCUs is that as freshmen, you actually have that little cushion of support from administration, that you have this unique space where you're not in your parents' home, but you still have some security before you become upperclassmen and you got to handle it yourself, you know. So you have this stair step that allows you to be successful, because some people really be like, well, I don't think I could do this and that on my own. You find a school, make sure the school is a place that you won't have to do it by yourself. It might not be your parents, but there'll be someone to help guide you, and that you'll be okay. And like you said, you'll learn yourself. I'm not a morning person. So in high school, I have to be at school 8:39. I was late a lot. In college, I know my first class is 10 a.m. and I'm not going past 5:30. You know, you do learn yourself and what works for you as a student, and allowing yourself to have the opportunity to learn yourself can be scary initially, but it's well worth it. I know when I got dropped off, my mother, we drove down to North Carolina, you know, one day orientation. I'm sitting in front of my dorm and she drives away and off the campus. And like, I'm like, Mom, go ahead. I'm good. And then to see her leave, I'm like, oh, you gonna leave me in North Carolina by myself, you know? And that was like what? Oh my, you know, it's grass out here, you know? But you're good. You know, I had an awesome freshman experience. I'm sorry, my son is home now. And I was guided, and even coming from an HBCU to a PWI, I honestly believe that my structure at the HBCU helped me be successful when I got to the PWI, because I knew what I needed. I had to go here, I had to go there, I had to do this, I need to check these boxes off. You will get it, you know, regardless of your experience of being on your own. But it's an excellent opportunity to stair step into independence, as you said, when you come back as a, you know, 20, 21-year-old. You can function as a young adult and not like a high school person who just got older. You know, that's my, you can do it. You it's people out here that want to help and will be there to support the family and the child. You know, find
and in the key of, there are people out here that want to help. Thank you for offering that, Corday. The HBCU Hub is here for any high schooler that's interested in going to a HBCU. We are here to support you in all ways. So if some people just want assistance with this knowledge about schools, we encourage you to continue the rest of HBCU week that is going on for the next couple days. And if some of you want some more in-person, want a deep relationship with the HBCU Hub, we encourage that you join the HBCU Hub University, which meets monthly. And for participants of Hub University, you also are able to apply to our scholarship program. We all need them extra coins. So please make sure you stay in conversation with the HBCU Hub for all of our viewers. students and parents. Panelists, thank you all so much for tonight. Y'all are amazing. All y'all finna be on y'all line to come be advocates with us down to the hub. So thank you for your time, your resources, your knowledge. We really appreciate you for pouring into our young people tonight. And that's it for us. And we'll see y'all tomorrow, everybody that's watching on YouTube and Facebook, for the next installment of HBCU Week. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Peace, y'all. Stay safe.
Same to you.
Have a good one.